Next concert, the future in classical music. Hello, Sarah Osa. In Helsinki, we're speaking on Zoom together because we missed each other when we were both in Helsinki. A project you are leading with conductor Jukka-Pekka Saaraste. You created Lead! Exclamation mark. And it's addressing to young artists and young conductors as well, but musicians in general, I would say, where you are inviting young artists to take their future in their own hands. Curious to hear more about that, but first of all, welcome, dear Sarah.
Thank you very much.
So tell us about Lead, about this idea. Where did it come from?
Well, then I have to think back a few years because we are now in our 8th or 9th year, I think, and it has evolved as a project. It started originally from two angles. One was that Jukka-Pekka Saaraste felt that there could be more done for young orchestra leaders, concert masters, section leaders playing in orchestra. His passion is developing orchestra playing, and he was talking about this quite a lot. And talking to him from my side, my angle was that I wanted to equip young people with more, let's say, just knowledge of the music industry and of the professional music world. And these two things kind of came together. It was very ad hoc in the beginning. We had some small projects with conservatories, and then it evolved into the Fiskars Summer Festival, which Lead runs every year.
Before we come to the Summer Festival, let's go into the background a little bit. What was your inspiration? Was it more on the angle that you would say, oh, young women just don't take their path into managing futures, managing perspectives and careers in the arts business? Or was it in general that there are hardly any opportunities because we as society or we as the business don't trust young people that they can take good things in their own hands?
Actually, I think it's the opposite. I think there are a lot of opportunities out there. I think thinking back, what inspired me was my own work, where I had been a performer myself, albeit in dance. I was a ballet dancer before. And when I started working in music, I worked in the agency world and for an opera company and also an orchestra. And I saw that there were many different points of view, but also very different groups where information didn't flow, let's say, between each interest group. It was as if everyone was being represented in a certain way. You had orchestras and organizations, and then you had the artists being engaged, and then you had the people in the middle, the agencies doing their job. And often I felt that there wasn't so much, let's say, transparency between all these different groups, and you would get very simple and basic questions and misunderstandings between, let's say, managements and musicians. And I always thought this took up a lot of energy and created sometimes difficult situations, sometimes even suspicion. And I thought that this would be quite easy to remove and more creative if more knowledge was flowing between the different groups. So this was kind of, let's say, a purely selfish point of view where I could see these things arising from my experience. And later, when I started mentoring young people and working as a consultant, I saw the same thing, that people were coming through, let's say, conservatories, music schools, and not really knowing that much about the music field on a professional level, let's say how agencies worked, even how to communicate effectively, how to set up a meeting with a festival director, orchestra manager. And there was a lot of things which I thought could be learned quite easily or could be communicated if they had someone to speak to, someone from the industry. And this kind of, I suppose, gulf between the industry and the young people, next generation coming up, I thought it would be a good idea and an inspiring task to try to bridge that. So that's a kind of background. That was the starting point, thinking back.
What I find fascinating in the idea of lead is that you're pushing young people forwards, and that sounds rude, but you're giving them chances to try out on all angles, on the artistic angle, but as well on the self-managing angle, and also on the connecting angle, because networking is something that's so important and underestimated maybe when you're younger, or maybe when you're too shy to say, hello, this is me, what can we do together? But I like very much that it's a try out and then reflect, not just theoretical stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that it sounds a little bit rude because I think you're quite right. I think it feels a bit rude as well, actually, because you are, or we are asking people to do things that aren't always done. And young people in particular who are perhaps a little bit more shy, and they are, of course, working on their art, which is their priority. And perhaps they haven't been taught or it hasn't occurred to them that they can introduce themselves, they can make contact. So maybe it does feel, let's say, a little rough, but it shouldn't be. And sometimes when I think of what is the most asked question that certainly I get in this job, it's how do I introduce myself or how do I make contact with someone? And it's something which sounds so elementary, but I think it's something that affects all of us, also people with more experience. How do you ask for something? Or how do you get over the feeling that asking is not a good thing? That kind of slight natural feeling of reticence that you might feel. I think that's quite interesting. You can boil it all down to that question.
And that asking is something that's so important, because whenever we are asked something, or when we ourselves are asking, there are these moments when you say, this matches exactly together and that's going super smooth. But there are situations when you think, oh my God, this has to happen, but I don't want to be aggressive, or I want to show the best part of me. And sometimes the other thing comes across. Your partner says it's not the right moment, or it's you're not the right person, or and that sinks down to I don't like you, so stay away from me. And to be afraid of that situation is something that, well, we can't erase it, but we can avoid it. And so what is the keyhole where you have to go through and then say, okay, this is my little chance for an elevator speech, or this little spot that's, or that's little spark that's going through the keyhole and that's lighting the exact point. So how to find that? Is that a matter of the training at lead, or is it something you could put in one sentence?
It's interesting. That's another thing that comes up quite often, stemming from a fear of rejection, as you just described. I actually don't believe in elevator speeches. I think real networking that has a value is I don't want to call it a game, but it's a long strategy or a long game where you get to know people in a natural way according to your personality. And it should feel good. It should feel like a human contact. And it's really up to you what you want to communicate in words, but it's so much more than words. If you think about, I don't know, let's think of someone coming to introduce themselves to you. You remember their energy, you remember their smile, you may remember a bit about who they are, what they've said, but you remember the feeling, at least I do. And I think I sometimes tell young people that ask about this, you won't get a contract then and there. anyway. You won't do the deal then and there anyway. Networking and getting somewhere with it, it's a series of encounters. And sometimes it takes a long time to get to know someone or even get the kind of result that you want. And you shouldn't think of the result, you should think of the other person and be interested in them. Of course, it does sound a little counterintuitive as well if you really are after something. But I don't think there's any person that's going to give you what you want in that moment anyway. So my advice would be think more broadly on it as an encounter amongst many. They will know other people who might know you. You might get friends with them. You might work with them one day. It's all a big web of people, and we will be drawn to people that we resonate with. So I would take a broad view on that instead of delivering an elevator pitch, although that's necessary sometimes.
Lead, or let's say Fiskars event in the summer, is a mix of both. So it is opening the whole table and giving the opportunity to network and to find situations, and at the same time it gives actual points in which, well, one can deliver or one can show what they what's in them, and everybody is looking at them. But after that, we're speaking about young conductors having their moment when they are standing in front of the orchestra. We're having the opportunity of young musicians to stand in a lead position in the orchestra, or to sit way back at the last position from where they're catching the whole sound, and just supporting the orchestra from the back, which is important also. But everybody's looking at them. But then there's the other half where everybody's reflecting on that, giving their thoughts to each other, and then saying, okay, how could we either be better or more convincing, or simply being aware of moments when I'm touching somebody else's mind or somebody else's spirit. So this all togetherness is happening in the summer festival, but it is also funnily happening in very short moments where you just have one day with the young people. What's the secret behind that?
Oh, I don't know if it's a secret. I think it's true what you say that it happens in the summer festival, but then it continues afterwards. And I think it has to, because the summer festival is 10 days maximum. There isn't really time to process everything. You have these kind of, let's say, maybe a little bit rude awakenings or moments where you really go to the core of what is being demanded of you, and you should demand it of yourself. And this is something that I believe people do discover. They should reflect on their personality and their abilities in a real and holistic way, not just try to meet some ideal. And I think this kind of looking at personalities and trying to bring them out, and they're all different, and there are different capabilities, but everybody has a value and everybody brings that to the festival. And I think perhaps if you're talking about a secret, perhaps it is this kind of self-reflection that continues afterwards, that we try to instigate, you try to light the flame, that it's not just taking part in the festival. The festival it's irrelevant. It's only a small festival, but it's what they take with them, and that they continue to reflect and process and express afterwards, so that if you meet someone again just for 5 minutes, you should be able to connect with that. I suppose it's inspiration, or should be, hopefully, but it's also this kind of sense of taking something into your own hands, which is you, the individual.
That's sparks you're setting in millions of people, and they're taking it out to the world. But that costs a lot of effort and a lot of energy. So what spark are you getting back?
Very good question. I love working with people and I love seeing some kind of change, evolution, challenges being met, provocation, something out of the ordinary, something out of the mold, especially for our industry, which is so focused on, of course, excellence, training, fitting into a certain mold. And on top of that, you have the industry, which has its workings. So the individual, looking at the individual and how they develop, especially if it's unexpected and if they find a passion which is surprising, I think that inspires me the most.
Thank you very much for your sparks and hoping to take them somewhere in the world. Thank you very much, Sarah, also for this Zoom meeting and very soon in person.
Thank you for having me.
Next concert, the future in classical music.